So no one on this earth is without a mother. This is a saying that some of you may have said, have heard, or just it's a general sentiment that's put out there. It's often talked about when somebody is saying something insulting or something disparaging of a female, mostly an older female, and then somebody says, hey, remember, no one on this earth is without a mother. Think about what that comes from, where that comes from, the kind of cultures and societies that this kind of sentiment comes from. Think about what that encompasses. Like, yes, there's also just the whole term Mother Earth. Just trying to think about the female, how the female being, the female human is treated in the society that we have. And I'm going to be focusing mostly on the West here. And I'm going to show you a few things. I'm going to read a few articles. Bear with me with them. I think it's worthwhile actually hearing this whole article. So I was thinking of maybe should I just shorten them out and put some parts. But there's some articles where I think it might be positive to you to actually hear the whole thing and keep that in mind also. That whole term that no one on this earth is here without a mother. Think about what's included in that and what's left out of that. And there's also going to be speed drawing going on the screen, which is Wonder Woman, which is again tying into that thing. How is the female treated? How many women are treated like these superheroes? Are women superheroes? Are they mistreated? Are they treated as lowly people in the societies that we live in? There was this thing when the Wonder Woman movie came out, a lot of people were coming out and saying, hey, this is the first time. This is the first time we have a female lead that can show strong female women. Strong female women. Strong female women is actually a thing now because there's apparently strong female men. Because you can be female biologically in some places and still a man, depending on how you gender express yourself or identify, or like for example Caitlyn Jenner, who was born a man in the United States of America, an Olympian, is now won like GQ Women of the Year or People Women. Somebody who is a male biologically can win Women of the Year. So yes, I guess you can be a female superhero powerful woman. I don't know. Female woman is not necessarily a oxymoron here. But yeah, so getting into this thing. So first there was this post that I'm going to put on the screen and read to you guys, and just check out what's being said on this. This is something posted by Occupy Democrats. This is a page, I think it was on Facebook. A friend of mine posted this. So it says this: women have mental illness too. Yet 98% of mass shootings are committed by men. This was sourced by Mother Jones in 2017. This isn't about mental illness. This is about violent men and their easy access to killing machines. This was the response included with it. These violent men, and in parentheses, cowards, are the way they are because they were raised in a fatherless household. The latest statistics show that 26 of the last 27 mass shooters grew up in a fatherless home. No offense to mothers, but in a lot of cases, a woman cannot raise a boy to grow into a man. What you get is a soft-ass beta male who hasn't been shown how to handle his emotions that come along with being filled with testosterone. For the most part, he grows up filled with testosterone of a male, but with the emotional capacity of a female. Used axiom that possession is 9/10. Okay, so what do you guys think about this? What do you think about the things pointed out in the original post and the response given? I'm going to kind of paraphrase what my response to this was and kind of go into what somebody else commented after I wrote this. So I was writing about how when the child of a single mother does well, we're often treated to the how successful and positive the influence of the single mother was. Like, wow, look, single mothers can do great things. This is a child of a single mother. We have a lot of actual celebrities and things like that. A lot of athletes, surprisingly, do this. Like LeBron James right now, Kevin Durant. Even there's some situations where people are actually talking about Kevin Durant, where they're like, hey, Kevin Durant, this is a player on the Golden State Warriors, considered to be probably the second best player in the world. He's being considered like, wow, yeah, he's a mama's boy. And the people who comment on that often quickly say, and that's not a bad thing. He's a mama's boy, and that's not a bad thing. So that whole aspect is there. Like, yes, that is part of the thing. Even during his, I think, MVP speech, where actually when he won the most valuable player of the NBA playoffs some years back. And I think he was like talking about how his mom was a true hero. And this is something that we hear repeatedly in the United States of America, in other countries in the world, in I think the Western tradition. I don't know how much it's done in Asia, but we're going to be focusing on the West here. But yeah, that whole idea of, yes, the single mother has done this great thing, and we hear about that. We don't hear about the kid having avoided being around some low quality male or whatever the case. In addition, there's that not quite right axiom of possession is 9/10 of the law. And I think in this situation, the good and the bad things, the positives and the negatives of this kid's growth should be attributed more to whichever adult is present during that child's growth. So be they male, female, related, adopted, elective, employed, or however, if you are present for that kid's life, if it's good or bad, it's going to be pointed out that you as an adult are going to get some more responsibility on what happened and not the adult that was not there, or the people, or the persons, or the things that they lacked. What did that kid have that made them the person that they are, or played a part in the person that they are? So as for the school shootings also, having this situation, why is it more white kids? I think part of the reason is I think more kids in that age range would be in actual schools where they would do the shooting, more white kids than black kids. And not necessarily just because of the fact of where the white kids live or the kind of families where they're like, yeah, you should actually be attending school on a regular basis. But even the fact that some of the black kids, if you look at the demographics of where people live and the people who might have these risk factors to be violent, most of the black kids, most of the, I think the Latin kids, most of the non-white kids, and that's another thing. People say non-white. I hardly ever hear people say non-black. Maybe that's because it's a predominantly white country, so you'd be the smaller group. I don't know. Do people say non-black here in Kenya? I don't know if there's an equivalent of that. But anyway, back to the point. So most of these kids, like the black kids, will be living in neighborhoods where there are gangs. So there'll be more awareness and prevention of gun violence at school. For example, there might be armed guards, or there might be actually people looking out for risk factors of the kids that might be more violent, or they might have a simple thing like metal detectors. Now, if you have a metal detector, I think most of the schools that were shot up did not have metal detectors. If you had a metal detector, somebody walking through the gate or the door and then it bleeps up, that might have been enough to prevent a few of the shootings. I'm not going to go into full details on that as I have not done any research, but I think that prevention is there. And another partial part is having the gangs there. These kids that have the more violent predilections, they may actually have an outlet to actually join a gang or be picked up by a gang in that unfortunate nature and have that access, that venue to actually let out some of those violent tendencies. Whereas if you're living in the suburbs, you don't really have that outlet and might get to a situation where you might have other red flags going out, but that energy and that anger might get pent up in a situation and then it blows up in a different way. Now, why is it males in general? We are a sexually dimorphic species, and males are going to be more physical in their expression of their anger and things like that. In different ways, actually. Because when you talk about a situation, why is it white males? Well, it's a predominantly white country, so of course you're going to have most of these violent situations be predominantly white males. The recent Google shooting was done by an Iranian female. I don't know if she qualifies Persian. I don't know if she qualifies as white, depending on what you're talking about. But anyway, so she was a shooter, but in most situations, it is males. Now, depending on the situation, you also have higher amounts of violence from females. If you just looked at actual figures and said, okay, look, white women hit their kids at a higher rate, a higher number than any other race in the United States of America. If I just gave you that figure, you'd be like, okay. But then you look closer to that figure, what is the percentage of them being hit? It's because there's more white women, there's more white mothers, there's more white kids. So even if you have a situation where white people are hitting their kids at 50%, and then you have black people hitting their kids at 75%, because there's just more white people in the United States of America, there'll be more white kids being hit than black kids. You see, if there's 10 million white kids getting hit, but at 50%, that's 5 million kids being hit. But there's only 5 million black kids getting hit at 75%, then that's less than the 5 million. Sorry, trying to do the quick math in my head. Quick maths. Man's not hot. Man is kind of hot. No, man's not hot right now. That's a Big Shaq song. But yeah. So the number of kids being hit will be lower, even though the percentage of kids being hit in the black community will be higher. So there might be more violence in a different community, but even the actual number of expression may be higher in another community. So just saying, oh, it's a white problem, I don't necessarily think is quite accurate in this sense. So while we're talking about the parenting choices, I think with school shootings, there's an aspect of look at me. The school shooter wants to be seen, wants to be known, wants to be famous, just wants some attention. Whereas I think the people who go to gangs and things like that, they stem more from a parenting, from a child abuse situation that has more aggression, physical violence, corporal punishment type of situation. So I think these two parenting failures do map out to the different cultures. I think with white families in general, they seem to be more neglecting, whereas black families in general seem to be more physically abusive when it comes to the whole child abuse situation. I've talked about this a little more in my series on the Black Lives Matter thing and kind of talking about where I think most of these things come out from child abuse. And I think that's a big key that's not really discussed. And this also goes back to the whole thing where I'm talking about the people who are actually responsible for this situation should be the people who are actually with the kids at that time versus the people who are not with the kids. So what is the parental environment actually with these kids? A lot of these shootings, you see people where like, hey, I had no idea. I was so surprised. I'm like, you're the parent and you're so surprised. How did you not see this in your kid? And there's a chance you didn't see this in your kid because you're probably neglecting that child. You're probably not around the kid enough. You don't really get what's going on with the kid because these things don't just pop out of anywhere. Whereas I think you have kids in gangs, they'll be like, oh, that kid didn't do nothing. You know, they'd be like the didn't do nothing kind of meme. They're like, oh, no, no, he's a good kid. They know the kid is violent, but they're like, oh, he wouldn't go that far. He wouldn't do it that far, or he didn't do anything to deserve this. But they won't say, you hardly often see in this gang violence situations where, oh, this kid was just an angel, because they know that kid has violent tendencies. They know that kid is overbearing in a sense, in most of these cases, at least from my experience. So somebody responded that this response to the Occupy post was an oversimplification that ignored things like abuse, infidelity, drugs, and etc. So to that I had a few queries, a few thoughts to anybody that thinks it is an oversimplification. Would you carry this on and also say that the original Occupy post that ended with, it's just violent men, to be an oversimplification about men? And how often would you say that it's an oversimplification to say that females do not achieve the same as men because they do not have female role models in certain fields growing up? So let's mentor her, hashtag mentor her, then the wage gap will disappear. Let's make it STEAM, which is instead of science, technology, engineering, and medicine, let's add the arts to that. Let's make it STEAM, and then more females will enter and stay in higher earning fields. So girls with lack of female role models is an explanation for a negative result. Yet boys with a lack of male role models is an oversimplification, because that's what the post is saying. A lot of people you often hear this, that to improve the situation of females, to improve females earning, we need to show them women in power, and then women will be powerful and earn more and be happier. So if somebody comes out and says, hey, maybe to improve the situation of these men or these boys, we should have male role models in their life, and then maybe that will help them get stronger, get better. So when somebody says that, that's an oversimplification, and that right there is a double standard that I think needs to be pointed out and known and addressed. I think here's another good example of the choices that people make. Just the same way that the access to the STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, and maths, is the same for any gender. If you're a man or woman, you can just choose to join these things and major in them and try to get a job in them. The same way, like, if you have access to these weapons, a girl and a boy can still go out and buy a gun. A girl and a boy still have parents that have guns in these situations where the kid has stolen the guns from the parents. A girl and a boy, they're both bullied and both have situations, adverse situations to get them into this situation. But due to some things that happen with the men and women, with boys and girls, they decide and choose to do different things. They choose to access machines in different ways. I think just the same thing that gets men to be more interested in actual machines in certain fields is the same thing that gets women to not have as much interest into guns as weapons in that sense. And it's just in this Me Too climate, where does the male parental consent come into this situation? So that's it for the first part. And society in general is gynocentric, where we do want to protect the female more than we do the male. And some of those expressions may come out with limiting actual freedoms in preference of security when it comes to females, and then also taking away certain levels of security for the males in preference of them having freedom to do whatever they want or other things that they want, not whatever they want. There's still limitations, especially when it comes to dealing with females, how they actually treat the female. A simple example, I think, is action figure. They may be an action figure like a G.I. Joe. You take a G.I. Joe, and there's one kid who's like, I want to play with toys. And then he takes the G.I. Joe, he plays with the toy, he carries it around, it's in his backpack, he's taking pictures of it, playing in a river with it. It could fall off in the river and go down. You could throw it in the microwave, you could break it, you get dirt on it, and things like that. And that's because the kid is like, hey, I want to treat this G.I. Joe in a certain way. So that G.I. Joe might go different places, do different things, but it also has the risk of getting damaged. The other person looks at this G.I. Joe and is like, hey, I'm a collector. I'm going to get this G.I. Joe, keep it in its original packaging, and then put it up on a shelf somewhere for display. Now, that G.I. Joe doesn't move at all. It's still in the packaging. Hasn't even left that situation. It is more secure, but it's not more free. If you see what I'm trying to get at there, where it may have fewer access to actual experiences, but it's not due to the devaluation of that G.I. Joe from that person. Because that person values it in a different way, I think a different way, but even I would argue a higher way, at least values its integrity in a higher way than the child, then he will actually make sure not to let this toy be damaged in certain ways. So moving on to how females are actually treated by society. I'm going to read this article. This is the 49ers benched Reuben Foster when they should be packing his bags. Enough already. This is by Eileen Voisin from the Sacramento Bee. So per the NFL's personal conduct policy, the 49ers only have one option when it comes to disciplining Reuben Foster, the gifted but problematic second-year linebacker, who has been charged with domestic violence and assault weapon felonies for an incident that allegedly took place in his Bay Area home on February 11th. But it's a fine option. Not only would it work, it would hand-deliver a powerful message. Waive him, pack his bags, eat the $9 million in salary, tell him goodbye. All of which would demonstrate to the 49ers fans, and not just the women, that you too are part of the movement, that your franchise is committed to cleaning up the mess, to ridding the clubhouse of Foster and other bullies and batterers who have called Levi Stadium home for the better part of a decade. So since 2012, the 49ers have had 17 players arrested, most in the NFL, according to the USA Today database monitoring the incidents, leaving a noticeable stain on former general managers Trent Baalke's reign. Though CEO Jed York has ultimate authority, second-year general manager John Lynch wields significant influence and has raised a resounding voice on this matter. His actions regarding Foster noticeably less convincing. While Lynch continues to preach patience in thoughtful, tempered tones, his actions could be interpreted as meek at best. We believe right now is that it's wise to be patient and that all the information not there yet, Lynch said during a pre-draft press conference. So we sit back and wait for that to come, and at that given time, when we think the next step is appropriate, then we'll make that decision. He then added, I do want to be very clear, abundantly clear, that if these charges are proven true, if Reuben did indeed hit this young lady, he won't be part of this organization moving forward. So heck, if these heinous charges are proven true, Foster might be moving forward in a prison cell somewhere. On the 2 domestic felony counts, the Santa Clara District Attorney alleges that the 2017 Dick Butkus Award winner struck his live-in girlfriend's head 8 to 10 times, ruptured her eardrum, dragged her by the hair, and tried to prevent her from reporting the incident. While Lynch's response hints that the organization has some doubts about the evidence or the details, The reality is that the district attorney's office is unlikely to pursue cases unless they are confident of a conviction. Presumably, then, in this case, the prosecutor believed that with or without the victim's testimony, they have adequate evidence, primarily consisting of photos, medical records, and witness accounts. The circumstances, sadly, are far from uncommon. The Centers for Disease Control report that the approximate rates of intimate partner violence as follows. An estimated 1 in 3 women experiences rape, physical violence, and or stalking by an intimate partner in their lifetime. An estimated 1.3 million women are physically assaulted by their intimate partner each year. Among victims of intimate partner violence, only 84% of females disclose the assault to somebody, primarily a friend or relative, and a mere 21% reported the matter to a doctor or nurse at some point in their lifetime. These past few years, the 49ers finally appear to be listening to their critics, and undoubtedly aware of NFL's declining game day attendance, seemingly intent on shedding their own reputation as coddlers of Aldon Smith and other troubled or unsavory characters. Bruce Miller and Tremaine Block were cut within a day of their arrests and assault charges in 2016 and 2017, respectively. Admittedly wary before selecting Foster in the first round, 31st overall last year, Lynch and his staff researched the 6'1", 228-pound Auburn, Alabama native extensively and concluded he could curb his behavior, naively as it turns out. So at the scouting combine, he failed a drug test and verbally berated a member of the staff during the medical examination. After finishing second on the team in tackles, Foster was arrested in January for second-degree marijuana possession in Alabama. Now, in addition to 2 domestic violence charges, he faces another felony count for possession of an assault weapon. That the 49ers won't cut their losses and pay the price, that $9 million, remains a head-scratcher. Loyalty to an employee is honorable. But how many employees would still have a job under these circumstances? In the real world, not many. So that's this article, and a few things. I'm going to go back in and kind of talk about a few things. So that article came out on May 7th, and the way I found it was finding this article. So while editing this, I remembered how I came to this story was reading a story about WWE wrestler Enzo Amore, who had been fired after an accusation of sexual assault that was overturned. The person who accused him was found to be lying, and he still stayed fired. And then on that same website, I found this article about Reuben Foster, and then followed it to a few other things, and I'll talk about that more as the video continues. Reuben Foster's ex-girlfriend, Elisa Ennis, testifies in detail how she lied about him hitting her, planned to extort him, and would drain his bank accounts with stolen account numbers after she put him in jail. So somebody had posted this on a social media platform, and I read this, and I was just like, "Wow, this is a horrendous situation." And I went on and kind of checked and see what the coverage was when the first accusations actually came out. And even some people were talking about in the comment section. I said, "Okay, this is abhorrent. This is a horrible thing that this Elisa Ennis has done to Reuben Foster." People were already defending her and saying, "Oh, maybe he actually hit her. Maybe this actually happened." And I'm like, look, there was actually footage of Elisa Ennis getting in a road rage situation. Somebody cut her off or something, and she pulls over on the side of the street, gets out of her car, gets in a physical fight with this other female. It's actually recorded. And to have the mentality for you to actually get in a physical fight over some road incident and have somebody record it and still be okay with that, and then go home and get in a confrontation with Reuben Foster, her boyfriend at this time, and get in this fight, and then go over that and actually get to a situation where she actually accuses him of the assault. She drains his bank account, took money out of his bank account, leaves with jewelry and a watch and things like that. And then you still have people defending her. Maybe it's something that she did. Maybe something that was done to her that led to this. And then you have these articles in the past just damning Reuben Foster, saying, yes, look, throw the book at him. Why does he still have a job? How is she still talking about this? Like, Ennis came out and said this. This was in this article here. It said, Ennis said she called 911 3 times on February 11th because Foster broke up with her. When a prosecutor asked why she called a third time, Ennis said, "I wanted to be extra. I wanted him to go down. I was pissed." Ennis was asked by a prosecutor if she took the money from Foster. "I took more than money. I took all his jewelry and designer stuff," said Ennis. Ennis said she also stole his routing and account numbers when he went to jail. She said that she was injured the night before she called 911 after getting into a fight with two women after a traffic incident in San Francisco. She says a friend sent her a link to the video or the fight that was posted on Instagram. "I wanted to sue Ruben. It was all a money scheme," said Ennis. And these people here say that she should really spend time behind bars. And yeah, it isn't the first time she did this. Ruben Foster's ex-girlfriend admits that in 2011, she falsely accused an ex-boyfriend of domestic violence after he broke up with her. Goes on to say here that Ruben Foster's attorney, Joshua Bentley, said to Elisa Ennis, "You knew this was going to happen when Ruben broke up with you, that you were going to go to your playbook and ruin his career. Isn't that true?" Ennis said, "Yes, sir." A few minutes later, after the 2-hour testimony, she left court in tears. So once again, it would be a crime if she isn't put in jail. This is what the people are saying in this article. She's admitted to robbery and fraud, but the cops aren't planning on doing anything. So in addition, it said here that in the time since the February 11th incident, Ennis said she has had little contact with Foster. In one of the few interactions, she acknowledged following Foster to a car dealership as he returned a Corvette, taking photos of the car, and then sending them to Foster via text with threats that she would sell them to TMZ, which is a gossip site. She also admitted that to stealing more than $8,000 from Foster after taking his account and routing numbers. That money has since been seized by the bank and returned to Foster. But Ennis said she still has the 2 Rolexes she took from Foster in a safe deposit box in Louisiana. Ennis also said that Thursday that she had been in touch with Foster recently because she was dealing with depression from the breakup and wanted his help so she could check herself into a clinic in Louisiana. So here you have all this information about Ennis, and I haven't checked since then, but I don't think she's going to get any jail time for what she did. Now back to this Eileen Voisin article, there's a few things she brought up in here that kind of piqued my interest, and now that you guys know the full story, at least more of the story about how this false accusation happened, I kind of checked back to see if there were any retractions by Eileen, and about a week or so after this article, there was an article of her actually retiring, saying, "Okay, this is our last article for the Sacramento Bee." And from here, some small bio about her said she had been with the Sacramento Bee since 1997 and wrote a column on a variety of sports from the NBA, NFL, to baseball to local high schools. And Voisin had previously worked with San Diego Union, Los Angeles Herald Examiner, and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and she had been a beat writer covering the Dodgers, Angels, and Clippers. So she was familiar with the sports world. She'd been involved with that for years. So maybe this retirement could have just been her retiring and deciding to move on to other things, or it could have been somewhat tied into this. It could have been like, hey, you actually jumped to conclusions and pushed this out. I checked a few other stories on this, and it turns out that the DA who was actually prosecuting this case was actually saying that I am trying to set an example of this. So there's a part in here where she says, oh, there's no way that somebody would actually go through this conviction without actual proof. And it says that the reality is that District Attorney's Office is unlikely to pursue cases unless they are confident of a conviction. Presumably, then in this case, the prosecutors believe that with or without the victim's testimony, they have adequate evidence, primarily consisting of photos, medical records, and witness accounts. Now, here, as we've talked about, there's witness accounts of her actually fighting 2 other women. There's no medical records of her actually getting hurt directly by Ruben Foster. What are the photos that they're talking about here? What's the adequate evidence? There's actually evidence of the DA saying he's going to use this Ruben Foster case to make an example of this kind of situation. So when you have this climate of this Me Too or this females are constantly in danger type of thing, you jump to these conclusions. And then further, she follows this up by saying, the circumstances, sadly, are far from uncommon. And I think, yes, sadly, she is right here. Sadly, false accusations are far from uncommon. Then she follows this up by saying, the Centers of Disease Control report the approximate rates of intimate partner violence as follows. An estimated 1 in 3 women experience rape, physical violence, and or stalking by an intimate partner in their lifetime. Okay, so with the wording of this, and I see this done often, and it really disturbs me. I think something should be done about this. I mean, people should. I mean, I try not to put things in this way because check this out. If I told you this, an estimated 1 in 3 sub-Saharan Africans experiences a bite by a hippo, a snake, and or mosquitoes in their lifetime. What would you think is happening in Africa? What would you think the number of actual hippo attacks are actually in Africa? Yes, hippos are actually the most dangerous animal in Africa. I think they kill most people in here, sub-Saharan Africa. I saw this somewhere else, and hippos are like the fastest. They're faster than Usain Bolt, faster than the fastest human being on Earth. That's how fast hippos are on land. So if a hippo attacks you, you're dead. Done over. It's done so. Like you're pretty much game over in that situation. Snakes, of course, bite people a lot. This is something that's common. So physical violence in that situation, that's the kind of thing I'm going in there. But it's a situation where most people are bitten by mosquitoes. Now, a mosquito bite versus a hippo bite, people would just say, okay, I do understand. I would rather get bitten by a mosquito versus a hippo. Even if it comes to a situation where I'm not saying the hippo bite is just the only horrible thing on this, because mosquitoes give you malaria, and then malaria actually kills the most number of people. So I guess if you talk about insects as animals, then yes, mosquitoes are more dangerous than hippos, more dangerous than snakes, but it does lead to something negative anyway. Being bitten by an animal is not a positive thing. So I'm not saying just because a hippo attack is not equivalent to a mosquito bite that they shouldn't really be put together in that sense, that the hippo bite is the only bad thing in this situation. So I'm not saying that stalking does not lead to other negative things or isn't negative in and of itself, but it's also not rape. And when you put these things together, I think it's disingenuous when people do this, because a lot of people will assume that a higher percentage of these things are actually rapes than they actually are. It could be a situation, like I said, in these attacks, where if you have 1,000 people, and then you have 1 in 3, so that would be a third of that. Then you'd have 330 people actually being bitten by these 3 animals that I talked about. It could be a situation where 300 of those people are bitten by mosquitoes. Then it could be 25 of those people are bitten by snakes. Then it could be 5 of those people are bitten by hippos. So yes, I am being accurate by that 1 in 3 figure, but then trying to equate that, yes, by saying this 1 in 3 figure, then I go and I say there's an epidemic of hippo attacks. It's a hippo attack culture going on in sub-Saharan Africa. That would be inaccurate. But I see this being done. People will quote these stats, quote the statistics, and it actually comes, I think, from 1 or 2 reports where these actually statistics have come and just become part ingrained in the media landscape of people bringing it up. They'll talk about that entire thing, give lip service to the stalking and physical violence, and then they'll go into talking about how that explains how it's a rape culture, because they'll focus on rape, which is the most horrific of those 3 things being talked about there. Another thing connected to this is when they talk about the reportings, when they talk about, they say 100 people have been attacked, but only 21 of them reported. How do they find out that 100 people have been attacked if they're not reporting the attacks? That's one thing that's kind of weird to me. I get it here when they're talking about, they're saying 84% of the females disclose their assault to someone. So maybe those people said, yes, I actually disclosed it to somebody, but it wasn't. Then only 21% of the people who told them they actually disclosed it to somebody, including the people in the actual test, in the actual survey, they say only 21% of those actually did it to a doctor or a nurse sometime in their lifetime. So I get that aspect, but in general, they normally say, oh, only X amount of crimes actually get reported. How do they know the crime has occurred if that crime is not reported? That's kind of a question I have for some people out there. Now, added thing here, they're talking about how in these past few years, the 49ers finally appear to be listening to their critics, undoubtedly aware of the NFL's declining game day attendance. And another thing with this declining game day attendance, this is somewhat related to the 49ers started the whole taking a knee thing with Colin Kaepernick. And it turns out that that is a big part. So some people will say, oh, it's a taking a knee thing. Some people will say, oh, it's because people are too violent and things like this. Some people will say it's because people are not violent enough. They're saying, oh, the rules are actually changing and people can't hit each other as hard as they could in the past. So a lot of people have different reasons to why the same thing is happening, or the declining of people watching or going to games. I think the higher cost of the games, the lower cost of being able to watch things at home in the comfort of your own home. You can sit there. And yeah, so these are just things where I think this is pointing out how people can look at the same issue and have very different causes in mind for that same issue. It does not, by me saying that, hey, your causes or what you're explaining is happening in this situation is not accurate, does not mean I'm saying the situation itself is not happening. The attendance in the NFL is dropping. School shooters are happening. There are a lot of white school shooters in the United States of America. There is also a higher rate of single motherhood in that situation. Yes, because the father isn't there, there are some issues there. But by me saying the single mother should have more responsibility in this situation, be they white, black, Asian, whatever, that should be more focused more on the situation, does not take away any responsibility, or does not take away entire responsibility from the father not being there. It does not say that these men, these boys, not men, but these boys, these male children in some situations who decide to go out there and commit violence should also not also be held accountable for what they did. So in the end here, she talks about how at the scouting combine that Foster failed a drug test and was verbally berating a member of the staff. She calls into question his second-degree marijuana possession charge in Alabama, even though marijuana is legal in California. And there's no actual tie-in. I don't think there's that big of a tie-in between marijuana use and domestic violence. Definitely not anywhere as close as it is with alcohol and domestic violence. Even though people who smoke often drink, there's hardly that many people who smoke and don't drink, but there are people who drink and don't smoke. But anyway, so this is calling past behavior. Then they call in a felony charge for possession of an assault weapon, which again, this goes by different states and different counties. If he was with these weapons in Alabama, it wouldn't have been a charge. If he was in California with the marijuana, it wouldn't have been a charge. But anyway, this is calling into attention. This is saying, look at his past behavior. That's why he's a bad character. But if you looked at the single mother and said, what did the single mother do in the past to end up being a single mother? Like, oh, quit victim blaming. No, this is not about that. This is about the father that left. No. How come in this situation you can call into question Reuben Foster's character due to past behavior, but when it comes to single motherhood, no, you're supposed to you're supposed to talk about the actual issue at that point. You can't talk about how did this person end up being in this situation? Why did this woman make decisions to become pregnant? What about her past behavior could explain her being in this kind of situation? Now, it's not saying that, it's not absolving anybody involved in this situation to lead to this person, but it's also saying what's the responsibility? What part did the actual individual that's an actual adult that has agency, what part did they play in their own situation? That is very key. Okay, so when it comes to these false accusations, why do you think they happen? What do you think drives them? Why do you think people do this? Who would actually sit there and think like, hey, yeah, I'm actually going to falsely accuse this person of rape, of assault? It's a horrible thing, and I think there should be more done to actually dissuade this. And there should actually be more retribution, punishment, for the people who actually carry these things out. I had a recent video talking about some body cam footage with a police stop in South Carolina, I think, South Carolina. It was an NAACP pastor. He was a member, he's in the NAACP. He's also a pastor, accused a policeman of being racist and stopping him. Then body cam footage comes out. Turns out the policeman was rather cordial in this situation, and that wasn't the situation. It was, yeah, this is proof of more racism in the world and things like that. Then now there's two current situations of body cam footage. There's one is Sterling Brown, who was an NBA player, and he was actually parked in a handicap spot. Some police got him, they tased him and things like that. That was being put up as, hey, this is proof of racism in the country. It's proof of how horrible the country is. Some other footage out there was Sharita Dixon Cole. She actually came out and accused a policeman of holding her hostage and then raping her. Then the body cam footage comes out along with dash cam footage. I think it was just body cam footage and then some footage of actually the police station. Because this was a situation that gave a whole ordeal. She was pulled over, she was held hostage, she was raped, she was taken to the police station and assaulted there. And then it comes out, this footage, this 2-hour video comes out where none of these things happen. Are people going to come out and retract and say, look, this is proof of false accusations? So you have some people saying, look, this is proof of false accusations. Other people looking at the tasing footage and saying this is proof of the racism situation. So what happens in these situations? Why are these false accusations brought out? Do people not understand there's actually body cam footage out there anymore? It's kind of a weird thing to me. But there's this other article here, which was on The Root, which is titled this one, Dashcam Footage Appears to Clear Texas Officer Accused of Sexual Assault of Wrongdoing, Attorney Says. This is an updated headline. The original headline included the officer's name, which was being accused for this rape. The retraction of this, or the update of this, does not include the accuser's name in it. And this was on theroot.com, which is a more African American, black centered site. And I think there is some kind of change happening where people are like getting wise to this whole technique of just bringing out fall news, where it's this massage news, different kind of things. Because you see the comments that the people had before the dash cam footage came out and then the comments that happened after. You can see the transition that happened there. A few people actually come back and say, oh, I jumped to conclusions, but most people did not. And some people still come in and comment and they're commenting on the first thing. So just seeing the dichotomy between those two things is an interesting thing. If you guys have actually some time to check that out, I suggest you check that out and see what people are saying about the same situation. You know, it's kind of interesting to see in my opinion. So as expected, the two dashcam footage situations were treated in different ways. I understand Sterling Brown is a lot more famous, so he will be covered in a different way, but watching a sports show and talking about how people are talking about, oh, people aren't impacted by this, so they don't care. The white owners aren't impacted by this, so they don't care. So by that whole impactedness situation on the racial lines, is the kind of situation where the black community doesn't really care about school shootings because black kids aren't really impacted by it. And then you had the previous shooting with the Parkland situation where there was a community of minorities where they were saying, hey, the minority students are actually affected by this too, but they're not getting as much attention as the white students. So there are these racial lines, these racial divisions and things like that there, and I do get that to an extent. But how important are they? How much are they actually affected in this situation? How much is this impactedness actually a situation to kind of understand what actually is happening in different communities? Now, one of the divisions that we definitely do have that I admit and agree with, as I mentioned before, the sexually dimorphic species, is the male and female situation, male and female differences. So how much are females impacted by issues that a male goes through? If things are couched in the effect that they have on women, then false rape accusations, because you think about this, that's how we approach the world. Even these false rape accusations, like the one made by Dixon Cole here, it's not talked about how it affected the policeman's life. It's mostly talked about how these false accusations, I do this myself too. I've noticed myself doing this, and when this was brought up, I was just thinking like, things are actually couched in how they're going to affect the other potential victims, even the people who aren't even being victimized yet. We completely ignore the fact of the men themselves that have been repeatedly victimized by these false accounts. You see, we are focusing on the female. So when you look at a situation and you look at a kid who's turned out bad, you look at a school shooter and he's been raised by a single mother, and they had the mass shooters in the United States of America. Yes, they've been predominantly white, but 27, I mean, there's 27 mass shooters recently, I think. And you look at the 26 of them are raised by single mothers. And then in that situation, you're not focusing on the single mother, yet in a situation of a false rape accusation, we're focusing on the woman and the effect it has on women. See, this is the whole aspect, taking away the responsibility, or focusing, not taking away the responsibility. This is a focus that we have on how females are affected in these situations. It's not necessarily just looking at the situation and saying, what are the principles involved in this? What is the effect? But no, we look at these situations, we look at females are worth our protection, are worth our attention at a higher level than our males. Okay, now another related article here to these false accusations and the lack of responsibility, and just trying to wonder, where do these things come from? Why do people do things like these? Why would get somebody to do this? It's this really another disturbing or moving, or I think it's a very good article for you guys to take in. You guys might know who Woody Harrelson. Excuse, I meant to say Woody Allen here. I'll correct myself again when I make that mistake, I think. He's a rather famous director and slash actor in the United States of America. And Mia Farrow was somebody he was romantically involved with for quite a while. They never actually got married, but they kind of raised some kids together or lived together and things like this. It was an odd kind of relationship that Mia Farrow had with Woody Harrelson. But there was different accusations that came out of Woody Harrelson having implicit or of having sexually assaulted the children, some of Mia Farrow's children. And recently, one of the kids, Moses Farrow, released this article. And with Mia Farrow, she had adopted several kids and had a few of her own biologically, I think. And just check this article out and just seeing, why would somebody actually come out and make these things up? And there is an aspect where there was one of Mia Farrow's adopted children, I forget her name. She was actually under, I think she was under 21 when Woody Harrelson first met her. But then they end up, once she became of age, Woody Harrelson ended up marrying her and got to a situation where I think Mia Farrow got to a situation where she was very offended and very angry about this and lashed out by making these false accusations. But the worst part of this is she tied in her children, who tied in her child to the situation to go along with this accusation. And then Moses Farrow comes out here and just writes this article about his mother and his childhood and his experience with Woody Harrelson and his experience with Woody Allen and how he thinks this was just completely made up. And you can see this horrific effect that a parent can have on a kid, in this situation a single mother can have on their child's lives. And this is an aspect that I think is completely ignored in, not completely ignored, but is ignored in society. And this is something horrific that can happen. And why would somebody do this? Why would somebody do this? Why aren't people punished for this? Because even if it comes out that it's 100% that she lied, what's going to happen? I mean, Woody Allen hasn't been thrown in jail for what happened because nothing has been proven, but he has been, his name has been tarnished. He has been knocked down in society and things like that. But what will happen with Mia Farrow? Are they going to throw her in jail for this? No, it's not going to happen. But so when people wonder about these things, I also think I like to think that there is a punishment within oneself. We crave reality, and short of actual insanity, I do not define happiness as something that one can achieve with the knowledge of having created such harm and falsehoods to one's own reality tunnel, even if not a single person is aware of your own actions. So now that you add the fact that a lot of people who do these sort of things, make these false accusations and do things like this, tend to be very self-important. So them knowing it could be the thing that matters the most to them over anything else that anyone else may think about them. Because in general, these kind of personalities don't necessarily make a difference. They don't really filter out and say, like, I'm just going to accept your positive ideas about me and ignore the negative. It's like, no, they normally just filter all other ideas about themselves. They just look at themselves as they are self-important, they are self-defining, and the positive or negatives that you say about the person, don't really matter. So I guess this could also possibly be a psychopath, which is a form of insanity, but can they actually feel sad or happy to begin with? And I kind of think no. So that is punishment enough for me. No need for divine retribution or damnation. And just thinking about inhabiting such a reality tunnel is punishment enough, at least for me. So winding this down, and I think part of why this Wonder Woman thing fit, and just thinking about why there's a lot more male superheroes and this kind of thing than you have female superheroes. I think in general, it's the way we experience the world, males and females. This is the general archetypes that we have. And I think males need to be superheroes to match your average woman. Just women are just themselves. And that is already a heroic thing. That whole giving birth thing, being able to gestate, is a magical thing. It's something that you have to be a superhero to match. And heroic male figures constantly saving females from other despotic males. It's kind of a general thing that's out there. Many boys seek this as they understand this is how they can become valuable. This is how they can become valuable enough to have a female be like, yes, I'm going to trade my valuable ability to reproduce to you because you are superheroic in a sense. Superman needs to be that. He needs to be super. He needs to be a superhero in order to get Lois Lane. Lois Lane is just a reporter. It's just a human. Superman has to be this alien superpower god, most powerful creature ever. And they get that. And nobody feels that, oh, Superman is kind of like, should go with Wonder Woman instead. It's like, no. Lois Lane is Wonder Woman enough for the greatest superhero in that DC universe. So that's something I'm talking about where it is coming about the false accusations. Where does it come from? People just falsely accusing a certain group of people for something and taking away responsibility from the people who make those accusations or the people involved in that situation. And as I mentioned before, that whole situation with the amount of people that do one thing, when they say, why is this a predominantly white situation? Why are white people predominantly shooting up schools? Why are white men predominantly doing this? Then you could look at the situation and I can say, why are black women predominantly killing their own children? So when we're talking about these different figures with the different races and things like that, and who's hurt by what and who does what and why white people shoot more than this, here's another figure. Here's another thing when it comes to abortion. And there's going to be a link below to this site. So in America today, the average black woman is almost 5 times more likely to have an abortion than the average white woman. Part of this disparity owes to the fact that statistically, black women get pregnant more frequently than white women. But even if we control for pregnancy, black babies are still more than 3 times more likely to be aborted than their white counterparts. Here's what it looks like by the numbers. According to the latest census data, just over 12% of the US population is black, and yet somewhere between 28 to 36% of all the 2014 abortions were performed on black babies. The Guttmacher Institute puts that number at 28%, based on voluntary survey data among 8,380 respondents. The Centers for Disease Control, CDC, places the number at 36%, based on actual accounts of every abortion performed in the 30 states and districts that collected and reported abortions data by race. By comparison, non-Hispanic white women make up 61% of the population, but account for only 38 to 39% of all abortions. Some suggest that the reason black women have a much higher rate of abortion is because the abortion industry has strategically targeted them. Life Issues Institute reports that a majority of Planned Parenthood abortion clinics are within walking distance of minority communities. The Guttmacher Institute insists that most Planned Parenthood's abortion clinics are in neighborhoods with a white majority. So I'm going to close up with the same way that I opened up. No one is on this earth without a mother. And that's a very true thing. And as I was mentioning here with the abortion situation, you can see how different people talk about this in a different way. How some people look at the abortion numbers, and even though, yes, there may be more actual abortion clinics in white neighborhoods just because there's more white neighborhoods. So even if you had a completely equal distribution of abortion clinics in the United States of America, by the fact that there's more white people, they'd be more in white neighborhoods. So even if you had an entirely equal distribution of school shooters in the United States of America, most of them will be white people. So it's not necessarily tied into the race. But people can look at figures and say, hey, look, this is focused on this by focusing on a certain situation. And as I mentioned again, everyone who's on this world has a mother. I mean, nobody's on this world without a mother. And that's a true fact. That happens. But also, how about the people who die? The people who don't get to be on this world because of their mother? The people who end up not being on this world because somebody had a certain kind of mother? That's something that's kind of tied in, and that's kind of what I want to talk about in this kind of video, to just talk about how there is some responsibility, a lot more responsibility than people actually give to the actual mother, whether it's good or bad. And this is a focus on the female, because even with this article, just ending up, and again, there'll be links below to this article. It's from the site abort73.com. It ends up with this paragraph where after those things talking about the different races and different people involved in it, and that whole focus that I'm talking about, how we as a gynocentric society focus on the female, even in a situation like abortion. Because I think with most people when abortion comes up, it's mostly about the life that's lost versus the life that's actually there. That's what most people have objections for it. Then most people say, pro-choice and people like this are saying, how about the female's choices? How about the female's quality of life? Let her decide. But people say, how about the baby? So check this last paragraph out. Abortion, you see, is a form of self-immolation. It is racism perpetrated against one's race. It is sexism perpetrated against one's own sex. And it is classism perpetrated against one's own class. In theory, every mother who has an abortion does so willingly and without compulsion. In practice, this is almost never the case. As Frederica Matthews Green speculates, a woman wants an abortion as an animal caught in a trap wants to gnaw off its own leg. She says that not to justify abortion, but to point out that it is a violent and desperate attempt at self-preservation, which leaves its survivors permanently damaged. Every abortion is violent and fatal, and its incommensurate impact on minority children and minority communities should deeply trouble us all. So yeah, That's it. What do you guys think about that? Do you think that's accurate? Do you think this is taking away responsibility from the female in that situation? This is making an excuse? Do you think that whole gnawing off a leg thing is making an excuse for the situation? Do you think when you say, okay, um, a single parent who has a negative kid, who has a kid who has negative results, a single mother, if that's a situation where it's like, no, it's not her responsibility, but she just did the best that she could do. She was just working with what she was given. Do you think that's accurate? But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Thanks for listening. I know it was a little jumbled in here and there, but yeah, that's it for now. Goodbye.